The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you. Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
your Dawn of the Dead remake zombie jump scare baby that is Hayden Nora. My pronouns are also he, him.
Yeah. There's not a lot of good, like funny things about this, but the baby is definitely the choice there. So we were just, before we pressed record, we were just we're talking about A Nightmare Wakes. I think sometimes it has like a subtitle of like something of Frankenstein. But this is, I am pretty sure I have seen this movie before, but watching it a day or two ago, I had zero memory of anything in this movie, which, I don't know, maybe tells you a little bit of something about how I feel about it before we get into it.
It reminded me of, what was that other Mary Shelley, retelling of Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein at Lake Diodati that you guys covered? I think it had like Ella Purnell as Mary. Or am I thinking of the right movie?
Was that the one that's Gothic? Gothic was the one where Mary Shelley is Natasha Richardson. Is it? It's.
Oh yeah.
And then there's
maybe I'm thinking of something different then.
Yeah. I'm trying to think because I know we've done that one. We did the one that's just called Mary Shelley with Elle Fanning.
Sorry, not Ella Purnell, Elle Fanning. I always get their fucking names, their names mixed up. Yeah.
Yeah. This one definitely kind of falls sort of right in between those two in that like the Elle Fanning one, I think, is mostly trying to be, fairly accurate as far as like a biopic goes, and then Gothic is like like trashy and weird, and this one that's the one that's like Ken Russell directed and like the demon painting comes to life. It's kind of nonsense. This one's sort of in the middle where it's like it plays real fast and loose with like history and the timeline and stuff. And
I was like watching this and I was like, I don't think that's how that happened. I was like, just off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that's just completely made up.
Yeah, which is a weird choice because like there's some kind of interesting stuff in here, and like this the blurring of fact and fiction, and like Mary sort of like, I mean, the title being A Nightmare Wakes, that kind of gives you an idea of that, like, and Mary's sort of intro to the second edition where she talks about the nightmares she had before she wrote Frankenstein and the nightmares that Percy had and all that. There's some real stuff there to like kind of sink your teeth into, and it almost does that, but then it just gets real nonsensical in parts where it's just like, you could have done this better and it would have hit harder, the absolute nonsense stuff really kind of waters down the like interesting ideas of it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's already like it's got the budget working against it. It's low budget, which you don't need a big budget for something like this, but like when they did have effects, like with the baby jump scare, it looks really, it's like, ooh, like that particular scene really was, I was like laughing at, because I was like, oh, okay, the baby's completely silent and not moving, but she's still hearing the crying. That's really like eerie and creepy. And then it opened up, it's his Wesley Snipes refusing to open his eyes at the end of Blade 3 CGI eyeballs, and I was like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, this, like, I honestly liked the stuff they were doing with like the blurring of fiction and reality. You know, Percy is Victor, Claire is Elizabeth, and Mary herself I thought was interesting. You know, Mary is seeing herself as the creature. I was like, wow, that's like interesting stuff. Like, they really could have done something great with that, but the rest of the movie around it kind of falls completely flat, and they didn't go far enough for me, at least, with that kind of like fiction and reality blending to make it actually like interesting to sit through.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't like, when I first started the movie, I was like, oh wow, Polidori, Byron, and Shelley, like they cast all like male, like men of color as like all the male characters. I was like, are they trying to say something with that? Are they doing something interesting with that casting? And no, they're not. They just happen to be like, if it would have just been one of them, I would have been like, okay, they just cast that guy because that was the best actor they had for that role. But all three of them, I was like, are they trying to do something with that? Am I just like reading far too into this?
Yeah, I kind of had the same thing where I was like, what's going on here? What is this indicating? But yeah, it never comes up in any way that like makes you feel like there was a purpose to it. Yeah.
And that's this whole movie basically, is like like you feel like there's interesting stuff that's about to happen, or like they're playing with something that's interesting that like catches your attention, and then they don't follow through with it in any like meaningful way, and you're kind of just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
but,
well, yeah, let's
just get into it.
Yeah. So we start out with like a pretty like striking sort of cold open scene where we just have a pregnant woman standing like ankle deep in like a lake, and then she just walks out into the water, you know, till she goes in over her head, and then we just like the camera just stays focused on this completely calm and empty lake. And then that's when we get, you know, the title card, A Nightmare Wakes. And we go straight from that to like, you know, like a really fast-paced, intense scene that's like, you know, the opposite of this. We have a woman running. There's a lot of quick camera cuts. It's very frenetic. It's like shaky cam. And then we see that actually this, even though, you know, the other thing was very calm but very dark, this is very like hyper and crazy, but it's actually fine. It's Mary running around in the woods playfully as Percy chases her, and they're just kind of flirting and, you know, having a good time. You know, he's got a poem that he wants to show her that he's been working on. It's like an ode to... this is a real poem of Percy's. It was one of his like love poems to Mary. And they're like walking through the woods on their way to visit Byron. And like right away, this is weird because, you know, the Via Diodati thing, like they were together in this house for like a good chunk of time, but here, like, yeah, they're visiting him. They go back to their house frequently throughout the story. But
which I think, when in like real life, I think they arrived at the property before Byron and Polidori did. Like they were there for a few days or maybe even a week before they got there. So it's not like, I mean, they had planned obviously to go there to hang out with Byron, but I think I was reading, like I was rereading to like just to match up all the stuff that they were just like, you know, fudging for this movie. And Mary and Percy were renting a completely different house, like that was nearby. Might have been on the same property, but they were, as far as I could tell, which I never realized before, but they were like staying in separate houses, and they would just go over to one or the other to like hang out and do their reading poetry or whatever kind of nights.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we also I think we have Mary and Percy, and then they catch up to Claire, who's also on her way. And again, like, she is hoping to meet Byron here and wants him to help her with her acting career. Like, they have not encountered one another yet, which again I think is not strictly accurate. I believe that they had.
Yeah, wasn't she already pregnant from Byron? When they were going there?
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Or they had definitely at least had like met, and that she had arranged. Like, I think she was sort of the conduit that arranged this like trip together. But but when they get there, Byron meets them outside, and here we have like I feel like I've seen variations of this scene before, where Byron comes out and he's like grandly like welcoming them to his place, and like in Byron fashion, he like kisses Percy on the mouth, kind of flirts with Mary, and then like goes to Claire, and he sort of like sizes her up in this very like predatory manner, and he's like, so this is what you've brought me. I think I can use this. It's very gross, very like the worst version of Byron from the story. What you've heard about him. It doesn't feel like a stretch or anything. But we go from that like to the night where they're like, it's raining. They're reading from the Phantasmagoria. Is that what the name of it's something like that. And Byron proposes the competition that they all write ghost stories, and that trying to decide who's going to write what and everything. And Mary ominously like nods at the film's title and says, to do something like that, you would need to awaken your own nightmares. And we like right away, that I think that's sort of like the beginning of things breaking down between like reality and fiction. We have her like getting out a notebook to maybe take some notes and start thinking about what she's going to write. And she runs her finger along the page, and it just leaves like a line of blood. And then it's one of those things where, like, she looks at her finger and it's not cut, and then she looks back down at the paper and there's no blood, and we'll get a lot of that where like she sees a thing happen and then we are immediately shown that did not actually happen.
Yeah, a fucking lot.
Yeah. In fact, I think like literally the next scene is Mary writing alone, and she starts like kind of doubling over in pain, and we see like, she's wearing a dress, like blood is sort of like pooling in her crotch. She's pregnant. And so obviously this seems bad. This, looks like a miscarriage of some kind. But she like, as she's like doubling over in pain, she knocks over the inkwell on her desk. Blood or ink spills onto the paper on the desk. And then this one is real. Like, she ends up like standing up, calling out for Percy. There's like blood and ink on her hands and stuff, which feels like, it's sort of definitely like, like a blood, sweat, and tears thing. Like, this is what she's going to be putting into her story, is like, both herself, as well as, the basic implements of actually writing. And I think the next thing we see is like Percy comforting her. She's in an ice bath, like that's, the water is, vaguely pink, as she's continued to bleed in the ice bath or whatever. But like, she did have a miscarriage. This is the, and like, we do know for sure that like that Mary did have I think like a stillborn, like a baby that died very early, and that this is one of the things that may have led her, to be inspired to write Frankenstein. This desire to, return life to this child that didn't get to live a life.
Yeah.
But this happened. This didn't happen at Via Diodati. This was like something that happened a little bit before that. But we're really kind of like.
I might be misremembering. I might be wrong, but didn't they have William with them on this trip?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
so they're playing around with the timeline to try to like give us everything in like a short window, which I get the urge to do that, but like it kind of muddies things, and like how is this all happening so quickly?
Like I usually don't have a major issue with like kind of historical movies doing stuff like that if it serves a purpose like to the story. But with this, it's just like you said, it just muddies things, and it makes it like people that don't know anything about, this story of Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein and everything, they're going to be completely misinformed unless they look further into like what actually happened, because they're just playing around with like the timeline of how things happened, and for no reason. Like it doesn't really. I don't know. It was just I was like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, and they play around a lot with like sort of things that we know to be true, that like that it sort of like again muddies things and makes it like less clear. We'll get to some of that later. Like the relationship between Mary and Percy is a lot more fraught here than any interpretation I've seen. Like to the point, like the next scene is like we have all 5 of our characters. They're out picnicking. Mary is kind of sullen, sitting away from everyone else. She's still mourning, having lost her baby, a few days before this, it seems like. And Percy's trying to comfort her. But then Byron is just like a dick for no reason, and like goes out of his way to remind Mary that she's the other woman, that she's not Mrs. Shelley. There's already a Mrs. Shelley, and she's left behind in the city. And Mary's like, I know all of this. Why are you telling me this?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he did have a good reason. His reason is that he's Lord Byron. And that's literally just his nature. I mean, you don't get a book written where the horrible evil vampire is based on your personality, for no reason.
Right. Yeah. And so Mary like storms off, kind of like a little upset about this interaction or whatever, but she goes to write again, and at first she's like, it seems like she's kind of got writer's block. She can't think of what she's just staring at the blank page. And then we hear all these like spooky, whispery voices, and that's when she's like inspired and she starts writing. And then like we just have like some time has passed. She wakes up and starts walking around the house at night. She hears a baby crying in the distance, and she gets to a door. And I think we'll get this scene many times over, and each time it goes a little further. I think this first time it's like she touches the door and then she wakes up.
She doesn't go fully through yet.
But so of course it's a dream, and so she gets up and starts writing again. And then like Percy wakes up and sees that she's like gotten out of bed and starts talking to her, and he's like, "Oh, do you have the nightmare again?" And she says, "Yeah, but I think this door, this hallway and everything, I think this is leading to my story. I think it's the start of something." And she mentions the quote from Michelangelo that people often bring up, that like the statue's already there in the marble, you just have to free it. That this nightmare is all, that she just needs to unleash the nightmare and the story will be there. She doesn't even have to, she's simply a conduit, which does kind of like, that feels accurate to the way that Mary describes things in her intro to the second edition, where she like does not really give herself much credit for having written Frankenstein. Like she really kind of, soft pedals it and is like, oh, it just kind of came to me. It just happened. There was this dream, and, which, I think is a form of modesty that is, maybe a little disingenuous. Mary Shelley fucking wrote Frankenstein, like that.
Oh yeah.
But I understand that urge and that tendency to be like, it was nothing. Like it just, it could have happened to anybody. It just happened to happen to me.
Which I think don't some other writers kind of say that? So not exactly, but kind of a similar sort of thing. Like I think Stephen King, specifically when people ask him about the Dark Tower series, I think I've heard him say a lot that like the characters just like, you know, are making their own decisions as he's writing it. He's just putting down what's happening. Like he's not really, you know, he's, like you said, sort of like a conduit for the tower and Midworld and all of that stuff. So I guess it's not, you know, it's not an uncommon sort of way to think for a lot of writers.
Yeah. I really liked though here where like, you know, after Mary and Percy talk, she like, you know, gets up from the desk and gets back in bed, and they have sex, and like while they're having sex, the camera kind of like zooms out a little bit, and we see the notebook sitting on the desk, and like the way the camera like is framing things here, like it looks like the way that if two people were having sex and then the camera wanted to reveal that like, oh no, her husband, you know, she's having an affair and her husband's watching, you know, like one of those kind of things. It's like the notebook is watching jealously as Mary and Percy have sex, which I thought was really fun. And I mean, feels sort of like appropriate for where this story goes.
It really does. I mean, and you know, like we were saying, like, you know, we were making fun of a lot of stuff, but like there's some good stuff in this movie, and it's not like, you know, horribly acted or anything. It's very serviceable. It's just it never goes as far as you hope it's going to whenever it starts like showing you interesting stuff. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, where are we going with that? And it's like, oh, we're not going anywhere. Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we go from that to like the next day where Polidori is pitching his vampire story idea. And Byron kind of mocks him about it, but then they're like, oh, so what did you come up with? And he's like, oh, I haven't thought of anything yet. And Byron's like, what about you, Percy? And Percy's like, oh, I haven't really thought of anything yet. But he's like, I think Mary might have something. I think I heard she was talking about something. And so Mary, you know, obviously she's not ready yet, but she kind of gives them a hint that, you know, she's been having these thoughts of something, you know, on the other side of a door, something dead and yet living. She's got this idea for a story of a monster, a creature who craves love but only knows pain and terror. So yeah, I mean, a really good summary of like what we expect from Frankenstein. And and then like we have like later or another day, Percy comes in holding an envelope, and Mary's like happy to see him and sort of flirty, and you know, what's going on? What'd you get? And he's at first very silent and like not really engaging, and like I think she continues to be flirty to the point where he's like, he's too upset, so he's got to say something to like stop her. And so he's like, you know, he tells her like, my wife drowned herself in the river. She was pregnant with my baby, and you know, they're both gone now. And Mary very selfishly does the math and is like, wait, she was pregnant when you went to visit her at Christmas. I can't believe you fucked your actual wife. I'm so offended. Yeah. Like, I
thought that was kind of funny. She's just not even like phased by the fact that she's dead. She's like, you fucking cheated on me, bro.
With your wife.
With your wife that you left for me? Fuck you.
Right. And I mean, again, I think this is like a common refrain. We see a lot of biographical Mary Shelley type stories. They really want Mary to be jealous and want to be monogamous, and that she's been like sort of forced into this free love relationship by Percy. And there's not, I mean, you know, all we have is like their letters and so like, but like it does not seem like there's a lot of evidence to that degree. It does seem like Mary viewed Percy as like her, true love soulmate, her main partner for life. But she certainly had other relationships, she was not monogamous either. But I don't know. It feels like, it seems like a lot of interpretations want her to be sort of lonely and resentful, and that this explains the personality of the Frankenstein monster or something. And I think you can certainly be a person who is lonely. She lost her father because of her relationship with Percy. She obviously lost several children. She never knew her mother. There was plenty of loneliness to go around. But
yeah, she doesn't have to be retroactively forced into the role of the beleaguered partner who is having to do whatever Percy wants, to, in her mind, to keep him or whatever. Yeah, like you were saying, people seem to kind of force her into that to make the creature's personality and everything much more that's where that comes from. But when you're a very intelligent person who's also a talented writer, you could do this thing called writing complex and nuanced characters without actually having to be directly the personality that you're basing your fucking character off of.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, it's. I think people always want to merge the art and the artist together. There's a reason that there's the counter argument of trying to find ways to separate the art and artist. But for some reason, it feels like Mary specifically, people really are dedicated to combining her with her creator. And of course, that's sort of what this story is about, is doing that. So it's understandable here. But yeah, I don't know. I find that refrain coming up over and over again a little disappointing.
Yeah, it does seem to kind of be very specific to Mary Shelley most of the time that you see it. It's I don't know if it's the fact that she wasn't exactly I guess what we would consider a one-hit wonder, but certainly Frankenstein's the really only thing that most modern readers are aware of from her. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she's a woman on top of that, I guess maybe that's why it comes up so often. There's just something in that concoction that makes people, I don't know, automatically go to that sort of interpretation with her and Frankenstein. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's exactly it. But yeah, we go from that sort of continuing this thread. We have, I think a day or two passes, and then Mary confronts Percy. Well, now that you're, a widower, it's time for us to get married. And Percy's no, I'm never getting married again. I did that. I'm done with it. I want to be, I don't want to be tied to this, political institution of marriage or whatever. I want us to continue with our free love or whatever. And they kind of clash about it, where Mary's well, if I'm going to have your baby, I want, commitment. I want to, it to be contractually us tied together. And Percy basically is I'm going to be with you forever, but if you need it in writing, then maybe you should just go elsewhere. That's just not me. And, Mary is outside of my own needs, your father condemns your lifestyle. We have no money. We can't feed a baby. If we just kind of get right with our loved ones, it would make our lives easier. It's worth it for that. So they don't really come to, I think he storms out. They don't come to any sort of agreement here. And then we get another scene that I again, there's no evidence that anything like this happened, and it felt real bad and gross. Mary's in bed, kind of half asleep, and Percy comes in drunk, he's clearly left her in anger and spent time drinking with Byron or whatever, and now kind of stumbles back into their bedroom, and climbs on top of her, and she keeps being like, Percy, no, Percy, stop, Percy, like, no one stop a lot of times, and Percy does not stop. Like, it, I mean, watching a lot of horror and exploitation movies, you see a lot of sexual assaults. It's just depicted frequently. Even, whether you're watching like a rape revenge movie or just something else that but like there was something especially unpleasant about this because it wasn't heightened and weird and like, sort of like the most like wild version of an assault. Like, this is like the real thing.
Exactly. It's very realistic.
And like, yeah, this kind of like spousal thing where it's just like, well, you owe me this is part of our, and like, yeah, it just felt real gross. I did not like it at all. And she doesn't fight hard because it's her partner, but she keeps saying no, and then when it's over, she's just laying there crying as he's like on top of her. It's hard to watch. And then like to kind of really like we cut to like the next day, she's by herself out by the lakeside crying, like still sort of it's an upsetting thing to have happened to her. And she's like, I think she's out there trying to write and get distract herself, but it's hard, and we kind of continuing this fact and fiction thing. Like, she's starts crying and the tears running down her face are tears, but when they drip and hit the paper, they're black ink. And then we like see her face again, and now on her face is like lines of black ink, but again, a hallucination, her imagination, whatever. And when she looks back down after, coming out of the hallucination, she like the notebook is full of writing. Like, she has written a bunch that like in sort of a fugue state or something. And like, she's reading what she's written, and it's, a bunch of lines from Frankenstein, like right there on the page. And then Percy shows up to apologize, but only to apologize about the fight about marriage, not about what happened that night. Just the disagreement about the getting married or not, which felt again very real and very uncomfortable. That like, he's going to smooth over this thing and just pretend like the other thing never happened, and we're all just going to pretend like it never happened.
Just move right on past it, while the person that the victim, is still like very much traumatized and dealing with that.
Yeah. But like, Mary does not really like take to this. She pretty much just like gets up and walks inside and doesn't accept the apology, doesn't say anything. Just she's still got plenty of processing to do, I would say. And then we have like that night, it's storming outside, she's alone in her room writing, and this was one of my favorite scenes, I think. Like, even though we will have the kind of silly thing here in a minute, but like, she's writing, she like looks around, and she's suddenly not in her bedroom. She's in the lab. She's in Frankenstein's lab, and she's like, like the lightning is continuing, but now we're seeing, like beakers and some, modest electrical stuff. This is not a, Universal or Hammer film, but they're doing their best with what they have. And she sees Victor like leaning over his creation on a slab. And as she like gets close to Victor, he turns, and it's the same actor who's playing Percy. So we're getting this sort of like further blurring of the line where, Percy and Victor are the same thing, same person, at least in Mary's mind. And I think then we go to like her having the crying baby nightmare again. So it's like the Victor in his lab thing was sort of a hallucination occurring from her writing, but then she is asleep at some point and has her crying baby dream again. And this is where she goes into the room and finds the baby. And yeah, it's not great. It looks a little silly. It's clearly a doll that they've kind of painted up to look corpse-like.
I mean, I agree with you. Like, the scene, where she's seeing Victor like right before this, and even her like seeing the baby itself, like it's great. It's got like really great atmosphere, really great like unsettling, creepy vibe. I think it would have been perfect if they would have just left it, like cut the scene on the like dead baby's face, like unmoving, but her still hearing the crying. Mm-hmm. But the eyes opening just kind of like blew it for me. It blew like what little bit of dread and like atmosphere that they had started to build up.
Yeah, it's very much like the Jaws thing. Like, if the shark doesn't look good, then you should film around the shark and build up that tension and stuff. And this is definitely the moment where we're seeing too much of the seams. And like, but that's the thing is that then it goes straight from that into another pretty cool thing where she wakes up from the nightmare on the floor. And, we had the thing earlier where like when she had the miscarriage where like there was blood, pooling on her dress. Now she sees ink just like flowing down her dress and out onto the floor, and she collapses. And then like the next thing we see is Polidori, who is a doctor, is looking over her, and she's pregnant again. So there is, the blood and the ink and like creation, and it's all kind of mixing together in this interesting and kind of fun way. And I think we have like later Mary again confronting Percy. Like, I need security. If you want a child, if you want this baby, we need to be married. Like, we need to come into this as like an actual, on paper partnership, raising this baby together. This baby deserves that. And of course, at that time, the baby would be, a bastard otherwise and have a much worse life. So like it does behoove them to do this for the baby, if nothing else. And Percy begrudgingly agrees. And we go straight into the wedding, which is like, we're just getting like a silent scene of it happening while a song plays over it. It's the song Dido's Lament, which I don't know much about, but I is obviously like a tragic opera song, which I believe is about like death. So this, it feels appropriate, and like we're not really like getting a lot of like. It kind of reminded me of, honestly, of like the Universal Frankenstein films, where like, in the first one we don't get the wedding doesn't happen, and then in Bride of Frankenstein, at some point in the film, Elizabeth and Henry get married, but we don't actually see it happen because it doesn't like it's such an afterthought to the story. And so I kind of liked here where like, we're not going to spend a lot of time with this wedding because, Percy's not really that invested, and Mary's doing it for her security, less so than like, the actual love of it or anything like that. I mean, she definitely loves Percy, but I don't think the marriage, it's a marriage of necessity more than, of desire for either of them.
Yeah.
And then I think we have like, we go from that sort of wedding montage to Mary walking around in the forest again. I think like the same forest we saw at the beginning. And she hallucinates another scene from the book where she sees Victor and Elizabeth talking in the woods. And as you said, we've got Victor as, is the same actor that plays Percy. And then Elizabeth is the same actress who plays Claire. And, like she's wearing like a dark wig. So she looks, or she's got dark hair as Claire and like blonde hair as Elizabeth, right? So like she looks a little different, but it's still very obviously the same actress. And Mary is kind of like afraid, like she's fallen into the story almost, and she kind of like tries to turn and run, and she crashes into Percy. And Percy sees her all shaken up and is like, you're overextending yourself, you're stressing yourself out, and of course at this time period, like any little thing, everyone was like, oh no, this woman, she's going to be hysterical, it's going to be this whole problem. Like the women were really treated like, fragile eggs, or fragile incubators, more accurately, maybe. So he's like, you need to stop with the writing. You can come back to it once the baby's born, but for now, I think you need to, calm your mind, rest, relax, stay in bed. And she's like, I can't even write. I'm going to be trapped in bed for months. And he's like, yeah, it's just a few months. And then like 9 months, that's like almost a year that she's supposed to just lay around and do nothing. Like can't even, it's awful. Like, and she's kind of keeps pushing back on that. And he's like, well, I did, make the huge sacrifice to marry you. So the least you can do is lay around motionless for 9 months on my behalf. Like, it doesn't seem like a fair deal, but it seems like Mary is willing to try, and we get like a montage of like the next few weeks. It seems like Mary is just like sitting at dinner looking miserable, back in bed looking miserable. There's a point where like Percy is sitting, like they have like a love seat kind of couch that Percy's sitting on, and Mary like comes in and sort of like climbs in his lap to like seduce him, like she wants to have sex. And Percy immediately is like, oh, well, no, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt the baby. And he like backs off, and, kind of leaves her again, feeling like not a wife, not a partner, not a lover, but just a thing that has to be protected because there's an important baby inside. So yeah, that, I think that is, it's kind of upsetting. And then like, we have some scenes of like, I think Mary has her nightmare again, and Percy wakes her, but then is like, I'm going to send Claire in to comfort you. Like he just wants nothing to do with any of the suffering that Mary is going through. Yeah.
He's like, maybe you can do some girl talk and it'll make you feel better.
Yeah. And we like, then the next scene is Mary actually giving birth. Claire is there helping her, and she's like, where is Percy? I'm having his baby. Where is he? And she's like, I couldn't find him. We don't have time. It's happening now. We just got to do this. And then like right as she gives birth, a man comes in, but it's not Percy. It's Victor. And Victor kind of comforts Mary as she's like laying there in sort of like the postpartum moments, and he's like, I'm here and I'll never leave you again, not like him, Percy. So we're now even establishing like a sort of rivalry between Percy and Victor, even though they're this in some ways the same person. It seems like she hasn't seen Victor in a while because she hasn't been writing, because she's been doing as Percy requested. But in this moment of creating a baby, maybe her mind is like flooded with creativity again, and here's Victor. And like pretty much right from there, like, we have, there's an instant sort of like tension where like Mary is not interested in the baby. Like Claire takes it away, then like cleans him up, and comes back, and Mary's like, no, you keep him, like, take him to bed. Like, I don't even think it's my baby. Like which is again, like there's a lot of like the complicated hormones that occur within a woman after childbirth can lead to all kinds of strange bouts of depression and mania, and like a very specific kind of like postpartum psychosis. And this is real. Like, but in this case, like it seems like Mary is sort of setting up like in the same way that Victor and Percy are sort of at odds with one another. The book itself, her actual creation, is sort of at odds with the baby, this other creation that she's less invested in. And Mary's basically like, I'm not interested in the baby until you can get Percy back here. Bring him here and tell him he has a son in need of a name. And Claire is like, I think he's with Byron, and Byron dumped me. Like, I can't go back there. It would be humiliating. But eventually we have scenes of like Mary continuing to write. And, you know, while the baby is, you know, being cared for by Claire, Mary is writing the section of Frankenstein where the monster kills William.
Yeah.
And that's when Claire finally connects with Percy and gets him back home. And Percy comes in and is like, so I was thinking about it. What if we name the baby after your father? We'll name him William. So there's like some really like dark connections happening there as well. Which you know, I mean, is that's real. We do have Mary having a baby named William and also writing a character named William who is murdered by her monster. So they're definitely having a little bit of fun with that sort of weird thing to have to like reckon with when you think about this story. Then I think like, you know, Mary sort of like when she confronts Percy, like, where have you been? Like, you've been gone for weeks. Like, I had this baby by myself. And he's like, you know, I just lost track of time. Weeks? You lost track of time for weeks. And he's just like, forgive me. And, you know, what can she do? Like, so I think we have like, you know, again, all these scenes of Mary being unable to care for the baby and it's sort of being left to Claire, while Mary's writing, and then we have like a scene where Mary tries again to initiate sex with Percy and he's too tired this time. And again, playing with this thing, like, I think he says he's too tired. He kind of rolls over and goes to sleep. And then Mary, you know, rolls with her back to Percy, and there on her other side is Victor. So we end up having the scene of like, you know, sort of passionate, very consensual sex with Mary and Victor, which is, you know, our first sex scene since the very not so consensual scene with Percy. But again, sort of playing with like reality, we see them having sex, and then we also see Mary, you know, masturbating alone in bed, or, you know, in bed next to a sleeping Percy. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was. It's like, oh wow, there's a lot of stuff to unpack with that. But do they unpack it? No, they do not.
No. Yeah, and I think then the next thing we see is like her the next day walking outside, walking into the lake, and we're getting like a voiceover of her continuing to write the story. We're getting some of the classic bits of you know, quotable lines from Frankenstein. And she like returns back to the house later, and Percy's like, where have you been? And she's like, oh, I just was out walking, thinking, or whatever. And yeah, again, we're really building up this like tension and sort of like animosity between Mary and Percy that I just don't think was there in real life. And like, and I do think that this is maybe accurate from bits of things that I've seen, that like we also start to see that like Percy and Claire maybe were starting to form some sort of sexual or romantic attachment as well, and that Mary is jealous of that. And it does seem like there may be a little bit of evidence to this. I think Mary sort of had a complicated relationship with Claire, and it was more frustration with Claire trying to get in on Mary's business than like Mary being jealous of Percy having a lover or anything like that. But like, I think we're getting, not quite yet, but like there's tension there between Mary and Claire, and she again, like, by this point in the story, we're going to constantly have Mary like running from one room to another, and also from reality into fiction, and then back into reality. This is, I think, what you were talking about earlier. That's another really great scene where she like suddenly, finds herself back in her book. She sees Victor, and Victor's like, "Come to me. I want to show you my creation, the thing I've been working on." And he like guides her over, and he points, and he's pointing into a mirror at her. She is the creation. Victor, she is the Frankenstein monster. Which again, this is the good stuff that I really wish they had like really buckled down and kind of gotten into, because I think there's certainly interpretations of the Frankenstein novel being like Mary thinking about how monstrous she felt as a woman in a society that doesn't like women. I think the monster's loneliness is probably Mary's to some degree, but not because of non-monogamy or whatever, but just because it's lonely to be a woman in this time. And I think that obviously like James Whale played a lot with that in The Bride, where you have Mary at the beginning and Mary being the bride, who is a creation of her creation, and like sort of the snake eating its own tail kind of thing. But like, for its faults, I feel like Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride plays with some of this same stuff, with like Mary mixing in with her fiction in a way
I was kind of thinking about that too while I was watching this. I was like, I feel like The Bride has like a lot more of a meaty, interpretation of like Mary Shelley's relationship to like the act of creation and Frankenstein as a story than what they're trying to do in this movie.
Which is wild, because Mary is really just a minor part of The Bride. We're really getting like the gangster story is the meat of that story, but just on the margins of it's still giving you more to chew on than this, which had so much more space to do interesting stuff with Mary and the story she's writing and the way that she's connecting with it. So yeah, it just keeps feeling like they're just onto something, and then they're just not really capitalizing on these ideas they have.
Yeah.
And I think after she sees, that she is, Victor's monster, we see in the next room Percy and Claire sitting together, and then Mary walks in and she's holding a baby, and we're hearing the baby crying. Because she comes in at first, she's like, the baby was upset, but I got him to calm down, and then he starts crying. And so it seems like, the baby's not as calm as she thought. But then we see that the cries are not real. The cries are in Mary's head, and the baby she's holding is dead. And, Claire immediately is like, what did you do? You killed your baby. And like, it takes a little bit before Mary can like see that the baby is actually dead. Like she can get through this, level of hallucination she's experiencing. But she did not kill the baby, or at least doesn't think she did. With it, in reality, she definitely didn't kill her own baby, but in this version, I'm not sure what we're supposed to think actually happened.
Yeah. Like, if they are implying that that's what she did in here, that's a very odd thing to put forth as historical, like a historical biopic. It's like, okay, I don't really understand the point of that, unless it's meant to be completely, like, in her own mind, but...
Yeah,
the case seems to be that like it's partially in her mind, but there is like this reality aspect that's also happening at the same time.
Yeah, and it's they do a good job here of like that. The reality and fiction are so blurred, so that like even once she realizes that the baby is dead, she looks up at Percy and is like, Victor, you can do it. You can revive the baby. You can bring him back. So like she's still not quite fully in reality. I think then she kind of does fully come out of it and realize that, oh no, like this is Percy. This is our baby. And we get another sort of montage of like, the time after the baby is gone. Mary mourning the baby, and then we do have another sex scene where it feels like maybe they're starting to reconnect. Maybe they're on the same page. It seems like it is actually Mary and Percy, not Victor, and they both seemed like they're invested in this moment together. So maybe the loss of this child has, that seems like a thing that either brings a couple together or ends a relationship, and here it feels like it's bringing them together. But we go from this montage to Victor talking to Elizabeth, and he says, my creation is on the loose. It's ever near us, and I fear that this creature may try to hurt you. So I need to do what I can to stop it. And I think we pretty much we go from that to Victor finding Elizabeth dead, and we're getting like a voiceover of Mary reciting, some of like the creature's monologue from the ice cave, like his demands to Victor, and that goes right into like Mary waking up in bed with like Claire sitting next to her, and she's like, "Oh, thank God, you've been unconscious for a while, but we've got to get you to a doctor. The things are getting worse. Something's wrong." And Mary's like, "You're just trying to send me away so you can have Percy to yourself." Like, sort of escalating from this earlier argument that they got into. And so at this point, Mary's like, "You get out. Like, I don't want to see you. You're not my sister. Leave us." So Claire, they argue for a little bit, and eventually Claire does leave. And as soon as Claire leaves the room, Mary just like collapses to the ground and is like, "No, wait, Claire, come back." Again, sort of signifying that like Mary is not well, like her, her grasp of reality and her emotions is gone at this point. And she, I think then like, I guess eventually just gets up on her own and walks back out to the living room where she finds Percy asleep on the couch. And she again tries to like, climb into his lap, and, is kind of flirtatious. And then she says, "Another child, that's what we need." So, this is sex for reconnecting, but also, sex for procreation. Maybe this is the thing that will fix our relationship and fix whatever sort of mental health crisis Mary is in.
Yeah. Which, by the way, that usually never works.
Yeah.
If you are in a failing relationship and you start to think, maybe we should have a baby, that'll make things better. You stop right there, reassess your situation, and regroup and come up with a different plan, because that's not going to work out.
Yeah. And so we have like the next morning after, this encounter, Percy wakes up before Mary does, and he like leaves her on the couch. And then we get a great shot where it's just like the camera just stays on Mary asleep on the couch, and like we see like, it get lighter outside and then darker outside. And so then when she finally wakes up, it's like evening. And she gets up looking for Percy. She thinks she's found him, but no, it's Victor. And then no, it's actually Percy. And like everything is getting very blurred. We're getting near the end, and the insanity has kind of like escalated.
Yeah.
And we see that Percy has destroyed Mary's book, her handwritten copy of Frankenstein. And he says that he did this hoping to free her, that she was losing her grip with reality, which again, like this time period, this was a thing where like if a woman read too many novels, people would be like, oh no, you're going to lose your mind. You're going to fall away into the fiction and lose your grip on reality. So if just reading a novel, I mean, imagine what writing a novel could do. But of course, you know, Mary's very upset. This is a lot, like years of her life at this point, you know, between like, you know, when she started writing this before she was pregnant the first time. And, you know, so she's you know, she's very upset or whatever. And he's like, well, I had to bring you back. You know, this book took you left me for this book. And she's like, no, you left me. And that's why I came to this book for some kind of connection. Like, this is your fault. And he like walks outside, back to the lake. Like we keep coming back to this lake. And, you know, he calls her a monster, which is, you know, obviously a great sort of connection to the fiction that she's been living in where she is Victor's monster. And she like tries to, like, he's like trying to walk into the lake and she grabs him to try to stop him. And we get sort of like a Frankenstein and the Bride sort of were made for this, or made for each other kind of line where she says, we were born for this, made to endure this torment for each other. And he kind of pulls away from her from that and just walks into the lake. Just, you know, drowns in the lake, just dies. And, you know, of course, you know, we had the scene at the beginning of the pregnant woman, presumably, you know, Percy's first wife, which we know that did happen. Like, she definitely did drown herself. And Percy also drowned, but like on a boat and not intentionally and not walking into the lake. But thematically, it's all coming back to this lake and everyone just like vanishing into like, you know, the rippling water that looks like writing on a page. And, you know, we're getting less, or we're moving further and further away from reality. Possibly, you know, here it feels like they at least have an idea of why they're doing the things they're doing, but it kind of feels too little too late. If they had not changed other things unnecessarily earlier, this might have hit harder for me. But yeah, so we just have like, you know, again, he just walks until he's gone and the lake is just calm. And then we see Mary weeping on the shore alone. And we get voiceover from her again, you know, with possibly the most famous and most quotable lines from Frankenstein, the "Beware, for I am fearless and therefore powerful. And if I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear." So, you know, now Mary is all alone, and all she's got left is her story. So we see her later writing. She seems happy. She doesn't seem like the brooding, half insane, sort of mournful woman that she's been for most of this film. And like she in fact like turns away from her writing and is like, Percy? And she's seems like happy, calling out to Percy, but we know Percy's dead. And she gets up and goes and picks up her baby son, who she has named Percy. And then holding the baby, she kind of like looks off camera as if there's somebody else entering the room, and she's like, Frankenstein is selling so well, as you predicted. It's a huge success. You know, our lives are going to get so much better from here. And then we see the person she's talking to walks into the room, and it's Victor. It's the actor playing Percy, but it's not Percy. Percy's dead.
Yes.
And so, yeah, Victor comes in and he hugs her close as she's hugging the baby close, and they kind of like look. I think they're looking into a mirror at themselves, at this the three of them, and he says, "We make a beautiful family, don't we?" And then we cut away from that to the camera dwelling back on that rippling and empty lake, and the credits roll over this just shot of a lake. So. it all kind of comes back to this, Lake Geneva, where all this happened, and I feel like we really kind of got into how we felt about it at the beginning, but yeah, everything about it felt like it was on the verge of having something really great to say and just not quite getting there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I understand why people want to turn this real life story into a movie, because it's very interesting, and it's, an iconic part of literary history and human history. It's a very interesting confluence. You've got more than just Mary Shelley. You've got Lord Byron and Percy Shelley, these two huge, well-known literary figures, all there for the birth of Frankenstein. But if you're going to tell this story in a movie and you're going to make factual stuff up, like if you're going to do something interesting, if you're going to play with reality and hallucination at the time of the writing of it, then that's one thing. But it's like you said, it feels like they're always on the knife's edge of doing something really interesting or setting up something cool, and they just kind of forget about it, or it just never comes together in a satisfying way, at least.
Yeah, it's just the fact that when they play with the reality of it to that point, then like the like clever stuff that they're doing kind of loses its punch. Like the hallucinations would have been more powerful if we felt like the things that were happening in real life were what we know to have been true. But yeah, that sort of complication there sort of like, it muddies the waters. It makes everything else just not land as well as it otherwise would have.
And I will say, I think Alex Wilton Regan, the actress that plays Mary Shelley, I think she's doing a very good job. I think there's probably some script and direction decisions that are outside of her control, obviously. But I think she's doing a lot with what she has, especially compared to everybody else who aren't bad necessarily. But in a lot of places, the other performances felt kind of stiff. But then again, she is also getting a lot more to do than the rest of the cast.
Yeah, I mean, she's getting to do a lot, especially with all the hallucinations and stuff. Like, she's really, getting to really chew the scenery in all sorts of different ways. And yeah, does a great job with it. Yeah, it's just, I feel like sometimes like a bad movie that's just like a crazy mess can be more enjoyable than a movie that's like could have been really good and is just slightly not. Just because it's just frustrating. Like, you can just see what it could have been and it's not, and then there's like a frustration there that is hard to let go of.
Especially when you can clearly see the fork in the road of where they could have gone a different route. There's so many points where you're thinking, oh, they could have done something really cool here. I wish they could have explored that, or I wish they would have done this or that, etc. Like, you could see those forks in the road in the movie, and it just makes it very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, and I still think this is worth seeing. I think it definitely has some interesting ideas. I wish they were more successfully conveyed, but they're trying something, and and it looks really good for like probably as low a budget as it probably has.
Yeah, I couldn't find how much the actual budget was, but I am interested because I think did they make this during COVID, or was that just when it was released?
Yeah, I think that's when it was released. Yeah, I'm not sure when it was actually done.
Because I know a lot of movies made during that time with COVID restrictions and everything, you could tell they were like dealing with a lot while also trying to film a movie.
All right, well, yeah, I think that's all I've got to say on this one. It's I think it's on Shudder, so if you've got a Shudder subscription, you can watch it pretty easily, and I think it's worth a watch. It's not the best thing you're ever going to see, but it does have some neat ideas.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're a Frankenstein fan like us, and you also consume a lot of Mary Shelley related media, like not just within the story of Frankenstein, but like biographical stuff, it's worth it. It's not the most accurate portrayal you're going to see, but it's not as crazy as Gothic. That movie was wild. They were definitely doing fucking coke when they were writing that fucking script.
Yeah.
Anywho, Anthony, do you know what we're doing next week?
So, we had Tim Kirk last week. He is going to be back next week. And, since we just, spent this week talking about Mary Shelley, it maybe is time to go back to a movie simply called Frankenstein. It's been a while since we've done one of these. So this one is a TV movie from 1984. It is the one that's starring David Warner and Carrie Fisher. So we will be talking about that one. I've been wanting to do it for a while. I have it on VHS, and I've been like trying to find a good enough version to try to talk about, and got to talking to Tim, and we're going to be able to square it away. So we're going to talk about this one. And yeah, I'm excited to get to it because it's one I've had it on VHS forever, and I've not actually watched it. So I've not seen this one, but Carrie Fisher as Elizabeth, it's going to be great.
Oh yeah, I've been tangentially aware of that one for a while, but I've also never seen it. I'm gonna have to check it out before that episode comes out, definitely.
Yeah, it is on YouTube. It's a little grainy, but it like somebody who's ripped it from a VHS themselves. But
yeah, it's probably in like 240p.
Yeah. Yeah, but I will link that obviously when the episode comes out, but I'll send it to you so you can check it out beforehand.
Well, where can they find us, Anthony?
Yeah, so you can find us on all the socials at The Frankencast. You can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. We're also over on YouTube. And, of course, we're at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where, just recently, speaking of Mary Shelley and her other works, Tim and I talked about The Last Man. So if you want to hear more about things Mary Shelley wrote other than Frankenstein, there's that, and there's plenty more where that came from. Hayden and I just talked about an incredible graphic novel just recently called The Hidden. Great episode. There's plenty of good stuff over there. So yeah, we'd love to have you if you want to double the amount of Frankencast you're getting every week.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that episode. I've read a lot of Mary Shelley's short stories, but I've never read The Last Man, so I was very interested in listening to what you guys had to say about that one. But yeah, definitely check us out over there. If you've got the time and money to donate, please do. We really appreciate it. We've got plenty of content. Just like Anthony said, the backlog, I don't even know. There's a lot. Like, you go to some people's Patreons and they've been doing Patreon for years and they've only got something like, 50 or like 100 extra little things on there. But I feel like the Frankencast Patreon, the more I go back and look, there's just more stuff than I can remember. I'm like, oh yeah, that. Oh, and that. And it's just, there's a lot on there.
Yeah, we started it not too long after we started the podcast, so there's a couple 100 episodes over there too. So yeah, if you join now, you got a crazy backlog that you get to dig into. So yeah.
Well, if that's all we've got to say, then I guess it's going to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman, Eric Velasquez, and Hayden Nora. Follow us online at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.